worldwide. We broadcast diverse international content from Europe, Asia, Africa, and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
Welcome to Millennium News 24 Power Talk Show. And I'm Eric Stevenson, your host, and I am with you. Today we have as our guest Ms. Pamela Stewart Martinez, the Director of Civic Engagement and Organizing for We Act for Environmental Justice Organization. She's a former female district leader of the Bronx. Parent advocate, education advocate, you name it, she claims it. It's whatever it is for our community. So welcome viewers and Zainabu and all who's tuning in and watching. And so how are you, Ms. Martinez?
It is great being here with you, Eric.
Yes. The viewers are happy, and I know they're looking at you, and they're happy to have you and hear what we have to talk about today. We had another guest. Unfortunately, the deputy mayor under Rudy Giuliani, one of the former mayors in New York, who is not well today, took a little sick, and so we was hoping to have a joint conversation about education with him. But unfortunately, we wish him to get well, and we'll have him back at another time. So Pam, Ms. Stewart, in the news today, there's a few things before we get into what we want to talk about or some things with education. One of the points that we had on the news was former President Donald Trump. He draws chairs, and he got some booze in Haley's backyard at the Clemson, South Carolina football game. He went there to undercut her because Nikki Haley, she's a Republican opponent, and he needs to win that state. It's a key state to win. So, and she's a former governor, so she has a lot of popularity there. And so he went there getting some cheers, but then he got a lot of boos. What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, when you go anywhere, and especially if you're going in someone's backyard, you definitely have to be careful and make sure that you have enough supporters there, so that it's not clear, it's not apparent that you're not at home there. So I don't know. I feel like maybe it was a misstep, especially since he missed so many. There were so many debates happening within the Republican Party, and he wasn't part of those debates. And just to show up on her doorstep, in a sense.
Kind of arrogant, but guess in politics it seems like anything goes sometimes, and being the bold person he is. But I guess he finally stepped on a woman's toe, and he sees what it's like. He told him pretty much to get out of here. So he'll learn to stop mess with women. Uh, Also, interesting enough, on the Democratic side, we have Representative Dean Phillips, who's running for president. He's announced he won't run for re-election to Congress for Minneapolis. He announced Friday he would not seek re-election, and his journey to public service began the morning after the observation of Biden coming into office, and it seems like he's not pleased with uh, Biden running for re-election. He thinks there should be a new, fresh breath of fresh air, and he decided to announce that he's running for president. I don't actually have all about his track record, but he is in the Democratic Party, and I don't know how much steam he's going to create. And at this stage of the game, but we'll be looking forward to seeing what his platform and what he's about. I would love to invite him to come on Power Talk one day. We'll see if he'll accept the invitation. So, what do you think about this, Mr. Stewart? Biden with some competition now.
I feel it's a little late to jump in the race. Um, in New York State, our presidential elections, the primary election is April 2nd, and I encourage
Yeah.
everyone to be out there and vote, um, and be aware. So other states, it might be even earlier. So I think it doesn't give him a lot of time to ramp up. Um, I'm not as familiar with him either. I think when you jump into a race this late, you either have to have a lot of money behind you to really get your name out there, or you have to like be well known.
Yes.
And I don't know. I haven't checked his campaign finance. It'd be interesting to go to the FEC's website and see how much money he really
Yes,
has.
yes.
Um,
He's going to need a ton of money.
or this could be just one of those situations where you know how candidates run for a seat that they know they have no intentions on winning just so that they can get some sort of more attention for another seat that they're actually running for. So it'd be interesting to see um, in a year or so if he's running for something else. Maybe he's going to run for governor in his state.
Was a way probably to get more widespread publicity. Um,
Without paying so much.
yeah, and maybe probably even if he doesn't make it, which I don't know or think he will, but who knows? 'Cause like you said, it's the late stage of the game. Some Democrats have criticized him and said it's a sideshow, meaning exactly what you're saying, that he's just actually want to get some attention to see what his future possibilities may be in politics or wherever it may be. He's saying that Democrats, we need a fresh start, and we need younger voices to be in the presidency. But at this point, like you're saying, in April, he doesn't have a lot of time to make New York's primary and be well known and get votes. So I would really have to look at this sideshow statement to see what's it really all about with him. So we'll stay tuned and see how that works out with him. He's not, like I said, I don't think he's too popular. Uh, uh, I've heard of the name, but I haven't seen any crucial or major things he's done in Congress or positions he has taken. So he'll have a lot of work to do in such a short period of time, and we don't know if that's going to happen. But we'll skip through some of this stuff because some of it's not necessary that we talk about today. Oh, this was one. Derek Chauvin, the officer convicted in the killing of the murdering of George Floyd, the former Minneapolis police officer. They said he was stabbed in prison according to his attorney and to the prison officials. The reasons yet to be revealed. What do you think about this? I know some people may be feeling happy and cheering that, but I mean, it's news we're reporting.
I don't feel good about violence at all. I was horrified, as all of us were, to see, to hear um, regarding George Floyd. It was heartbreaking. Um, and folks still mourn him to this day. But I don't think anyone really wants to. Well, I don't condone violence, and he's paying for his crime in prison. I think he needs to continue to be able to do so. Um, that's pretty much it for me. Um,
They say he was seriously injured. To what extent it wasn't mentioned. The attorney saying that it's the result of poorly run prisons, like a staff, etc. Of course, the prison officials deny that. They said they went to the scene right away and resolved it right away and got him to a medical facility right away. So, there's a back and forth battle between understaffing and bad prison conditions versus someone disliking him for whatever reason or whatever the situation, but he was stabbed. Moving on, we have a couple other things here. I think that was pretty much good enough for what was in the news. I think some of the major things was about the politics with Donald Trump and President Biden having a competition. So, Ms. Martinez, we invited you today on the show because I know you are a person who fought for education. You believed in having the best of education for our young and for our communities and for our city and state here in New York. And I know you tirelessly advocated in Albany, City Hall, local level, state level, governor, senators, assembly, etc., to fight for better rights for our children and education. So why don't you explain to the viewers some things about regarding your advocacy for the education here, school system here in New York?
so, I mean, the best place to begin, I guess, would be from the beginning, correct?
Yeah, tell your story.
So, I'm a mom of 7. I live in the Bronx. My children, 3 of my children in my home are students with learning differences. 1 is on the spectrum. And I always felt like education is and always will be the great equalizer, achieving anything that you want to do in this country. So it was very important to me that my children receive the best quality of education. And so when I noticed that I felt like certain resources weren't being given to my children, I fought very hard for my children to get the services that they needed. And I was pretty successful at it. And I felt like this should not be an uphill battle. It should not be a situation where a mom should have to give up working in order to ensure that resources were delivered to her child at the school in her neighborhood. Yeah. And it shouldn't be a difference in a zip code in what type of services your children would be able to acquire, versus me living in the Bronx or another student who lives on the Upper East Side with their
Central
family.
Park West, same public school system, yet services are different. But it's very important what you're saying. We're going to take a break and we'll return right back. So tune in here, Power Talk, Millennium TV 24.
Welcome to the world of Millennium News 24. We bring news, we analyze news, and we make a bridge between you and the eventful world. 24/7, Millennium News 24 team is at your service. Don't miss today's America, Editorial Today, and Global Democracy with host Tofader Noor. You also won't want to miss Todd Goldfinger's show, Goldfinger Music Hour, Noon News with host Todd Goldfinger. And to stay connected with all top and trending news, don't even miss Millennium News Hour with host Tanziba Nouri. Millennium News 24 is available to be watched free for all LED TVs such as Sony, Samsung, LG, Roku TV, Amazon TV, and Apple TV. And also in all European countries and Australia, available with the Sky Network, Worldwide Jago TV, Radiant IPTV, Worldwide Jago BD Network, and Horizon Satellite globally. Millennium TV 24 News, news you need to know.
Stevenson, your host. Every Power Talk show here, Millennium News 24. And we've joined, as you've heard, from Miss Pamela Stewart Martinez, as we were discussing some educational issues. So, Miss Stewart, if you want to continue on what you was discussing before we took the break, it was very interesting to hear what you were saying about the school systems. And so I'm like you to continue.
So basically, I was able to follow the rules and regulations and the laws as they are laid out for any student and parents advocating for their students. And I was successful in ensuring that my children received the services that they were supposed to under federal, state, and city regulations as far as what what the school system was required to give my children. And I was praised for doing this, and I felt like it was unfair. Like, why should I have to fight this hard? Like, we're entitled to this. The law says that our students are entitled to this. And even with the praise that I was getting just for supporting my children, it was almost as if folks were saying, well, you're better than the average parent, which bothered me because, as you know, Eric, we have families with different dynamics, different families with different challenges. Maybe mom and dad have to work 2 jobs. Maybe it's just mom. Maybe it's just dad. Maybe it's grandma. But everyone has something that they're working through, and trying to put me above someone else.
Not mentioning a single parent who has to get child care to watch the child to go to work. You know?
Exactly.
Yeah, so much, yeah.
So and it's very complicated. The law is not that easy, and being able to navigate through that, it's unfair. So I promised myself that once I got my children settled, that I was going to come back and I was going to be as supportive as I could possibly be in helping other parents navigate that system. And that's what I did. I joined the Citywide Council on Special Education. I was part of the High School Federation. At one point, I was on the Citywide Council for High Schools. I was the special education appointee. So I went out of my way to make sure that, one, the Department of Education would hear a parent's point of view from the Bronx, but also to make sure that Bronx parents had someone to come to. And it's not just me, there are other parents out there that I know that are continuing to help folks through this very wiry system that the Department of Education has folks navigating under.
I definitely applaud you for your efforts, and I've known you for what you've done, and it was great that you're one of the parents that realized this and decided after you set your children straight to where they need to be as far as getting in school, college, etc., that you say, you know what, I'm not going to just be about myself, but I'm going to go help those other parents and families and children who need the assistance and the push to advance as well.
You gotta give back.
Yes, and that's good, and more people should probably think about that. Your family getting ahead or your children getting ahead is fine, but we have to learn to be like a village and help one another and see to it that it's not just the one child, but we work to make sure that it's all children who get the good education that's needed. And one of my things was like the public school system here in New York, and it's probably the same in other states and areas, maybe even other countries, where there's a disparity of education based on zip codes, like you said, or neighborhoods, communities. Like for instance, the South Bronx, here, a public school system may have, I've experienced with one school that had outdated textbooks by 12 years. The principal had mentioned to me, Mr. Stevenson, I'd like to speak with you. And she said, our school, our students are learning out of textbooks that's outdated 12 years. And she showed me the books. And she says, but if you go to the other side of town, in Manhattan, in a more affluent area, the same public school system, not private school. You pay your money in private school, you could get more because you pay your money for it, right? This is public tax dollar, public school system. Central Park West, in the 90s, 80s, affluent area, the public school systems like there have advanced books, advanced technology labs and education for the students there versus over in the South Bronx, out of the same system. I mean, what do you have to say about this?
I personally find it very frustrating. I know a few years back when I was on the Citywide Council for Special Education, I don't know if I ever shared this with you, but my daughter went to public school on 23rd Street. And it was a great public school.
But they had good books, right?
They had
not outdated.
I can't remember about the textbooks, but my daughter had amazing teachers. She had an amazing experience there. I remember going to parent-teacher conference, and the college counselor stopped her freshman year and said, "Hi, Jamie, how are you doing?" Automatically knew who my daughter was. We're not going to talk this year, but next year we're going to start talking about what you might be interested in as far as college.
Wow.
Exactly. And then a friend of mine called me up because he needed some help because his daughter, who was a junior, was concerned about like starting to look at colleges, and there was no support in her school. She went to Truman High School in the Bronx. Yes. I'm so sorry, Truman. I threw your name out there. I hope since then that you've gotten the help that you needed regarding this issue. But this was an issue back then. And I said, what do you mean she's not getting the support? This is her junior year. She should have all the support that she needs. And so he said, no, could you talk to her? So I actually called her up. I spoke to her, and she inquired with the school. And at the time, Truman only had one college counselor for the entire senior class.
I think they have thousands of students at Truman, right?
They have a pretty large campus.
It's a large campus there at Truman. I know
this
Truman
was a few years back, so I hope that it's changed since then. But
okay, Truman, get more counselors.
College counselors, yes.
College counselors,
definitely.
Yes.
And so what ended up happening was I spoke to her about it, and at the time, like I said, I was on the Citywide Council for High Schools. So we had our meeting with the Department of Education there, and this is why it's so important for folks to get involved in these education councils. Because when you're involved in those education councils, guess what? High-level folks from the Department of Education actually show up at those meetings.
Because don't you think it's kind of like a crime to discriminate against a child's education based on geographical areas because they may come out of poverty or a poor community versus an affluent community? So they believe that the affluent child should always be better educated than those who come out of an impoverished community, whereas you could lift all up and make all ready to be able to function and live in society.
I don't know if I could wholeheartedly prove that it's discriminatory. I mean, it may feel like discriminatory.
But maybe it's leadership then. It could be leadership
it
or
could
people
be.
not advocating, like you're saying, about not getting involved in these councils. But it may not be because of like skin color, or it might not be because of race.
It could be. It may not be.
It may not be, but it could be that, like you said, these councils. That's why parents should pay attention and get involved in these councils and these
And
educational and the PTAs.
Because the squeaky wheel does get
There
the
you
worm.
go. So that's probably the reason. That's probably one of the key reasons, is because the people in the affluent communities, the parents, they want to make sure they get the best, and they demand and they fight the mayors, the city councils. So people, like you said, the squeaky wheel, they said, let's give them the oil, keep them quiet. Versus someone who may not be as involved or come out as much. Like I've been to a PTA meeting some years ago, whereas I went there, I was invited to speak there, and there was like 8 parents to represent all of the students of the school. Whereas I remember growing up, and I had to go to PTA meetings with my parents to get my report card, etc. And we had like a couple of 100 parents in there, so the school was always held accountable to make sure they're correct, because the parents were there. If not, they was ready to like chew your head off and argue and fight and advocate for what was right. So the school knew they had to be correct and do the right things. So parents who's listening, pay attention, and let's get involved in more of these councils and strengthen these PTAs. How would you suggest that we strengthen PTAs?
Well, I'll tell you exactly what
the Parent Teachers Association. That's what PTA is.
Well, what I winded up doing in that circumstance was that I went back to the meeting. I went back to the Citywide Council for High Schools meeting, because I knew folks from the Department of Education would be there. And I pointed out the experience that I had with my daughter, who was a freshman at the time, and congratulated them on how great that was for my daughter and myself. But then I said, but on the other hand, this is what's happening in the Bronx at this high school. And I was like, and that bothers me. So I did put it out there, and people did take note, and that's why I'm hoping that this issue was resolved. But what I will say is that people need to join the PTA. And if the PTA happens during a time that doesn't work for you or your family, maybe talk to the school about, there's been some schools that have 2 sessions, an AM PTA meeting and a PM PTA meeting.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Or maybe see if the school would be interested in hosting some of these meetings. I shouldn't say PTA. Most of our schools in New York City have like parent associations. It's very rare that there is an actual PTA in New York City, because that includes the teachers. Most of the parent associations are in the evening, but speaking to the principal and the powers that be to see if it's a possibility for a Saturday.
Yes.
Or can we Zoom in so that you're still involved and you still can work, like have a hybrid meeting. And that's what I would push for.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. I remember them always being on a weekday in the evenings, usually after work hours, probably 6 or 7 p.m. They would try to go on to about 2 hours.
But some of our parents work in the evenings.
So yeah, and that's the problem. So that's
things.
why your suggestion probably makes sense to have 2 sessions, at AM and PM, whereas you have more strength if everyone's together. But in the event that they can't make it, then everybody could participate if you have 2 sessions, or pick a. It sounds crazy for a Sunday.
Yeah.
Sunday sounds crazy, but everybody usually home on a Sunday, unless you're in a religious service or a program or etc. So do a late afternoon Sunday. So it's a good suggestion that you should speak to the principals, and if you can't make it, to see how, like you say, a hybrid, or how it could be a Zoom-in session, etc. I don't really like the Zoom-ins too much. I like the in-person. I think it has more impact, speaking directly to the school as a parent, versus being on a Zoom. But if that's what works, we had to do it through COVID. That was the norm, and some people are still doing it now. The average meeting nowadays in the community, many of the times now, is all through Zoom. If you want an education class, through college, Zoom. Everything is now going through Zoom, so it's working. So you still get to express your views and your opinions. So, what do you think would be the motivating factor to get people to participate more in the PTAs?
Well, definitely.
Would it be, I mean, for definitely to represent their child, but what would be something that you think would drive them out more to increase these numbers?
I think transportation, offering some stipends for transportation would be helpful. Like for elementary school and middle school, most students live in the same neighborhood that like elementary school and middle schools are in. My children went to the local PS, 119 nearby where we lived. Um,
I never
but
thought about that. That
yeah,
might help. Yeah.
yeah, but on the
people
high
probably
school
concerned
level,
about that. Yeah.
yeah, on the high school level where students can travel anywhere in the city to go to
Yeah,
school,
that makes sense.
sometimes parents, it's a lot to have to pay for transportation there and back.
Yes, yeah.
And then also, if there was some way that they could offer some childcare, like you said, for the children, because parents not leave their children home.
Yes, yeah.
And sometimes it's difficult to focus in on a meeting when you bring your child. And I think if schools really want more parent involvement, and that's the key, do they really want parent involvement? Because if you really want parent involvement, you're going to make things accessible for the parent who may have children that they have to bring to the meeting.
So parents, start putting more demands on your principals in your school. Make it happen. You have a voice and a right to speak up for what you think you need in the school and for your child and what best represents your child's education. So activity and participation is most important. So if you haven't been out to parents who, goes for men as well as women, if you have not been out to a PTA meeting or are not involved, now's the time to be encouraged to start being involved because a change can be made. And you have to become the change you wish to see. So if you want to see it, you have to do it and become it. We're going to take a break and we'll be right back here on Power Talk.
Welcome to the world of Millennium News 24. We bring news, we analyze news, and we make a bridge between you and the eventful world. 24/7, Millennium News 24 team is at your service. Don't miss today's America, Editorial Today, and Global Democracy with host Tofader Noor. You also won't want to miss Todd Goldfinger's show, Goldfinger Music Hour, Noon News with host Todd Goldfinger. And to stay connected with all top and trending news, don't even miss Millennium News Hour with host Tanziba Nouri. Millennium News 24 is available to be watched free for all LED TVs such as Sony, Samsung, LG, Roku TV, Amazon TV, and Apple TV. And also in all European countries and Australia, available with the Sky Network, Worldwide Jago TV, Radiant IPTV, Worldwide Jago BD Network, and Horizon Satellite globally. Millennium TV 24 News you need to know.
Talk TV, Power Talk, Millennium TV News 24. I'm your host, Eric Stevenson, and we've been discussing a lot of great things here with Miss Pamela Stewart Martinez about education and her views, which makes a whole lot of sense to me. And probably the viewers would agree. It's very informative. I even learned some things here today that I never thought about, especially when it came to education and being able to provide some stipends or some funds to get for transportation for parents and providing child care, because there is some single parents who have children and who can't just leave their child behind, but knowing that if they had a ride to the meeting and being able to leave a child downstairs that's supervised and while they attend, it would probably make it more accessible and easier for them to attend and come out. Pamela, you should probably write the guide on how to participate in PTA meetings. But It's a good thing. But what do you back to this textbook, outdated textbooks? What do you think could be done about that? Because what I'm telling you is the actual fact. Because the principal invited me over and actually showed me the books, the date that they were published and the date she received them, and it's been 12 years that they've been using the same textbooks. Now, in 12 years, a lot of things changed, especially in technology. We used to use regular wires and cables, and then they went to fiber optics. So technology is rapidly changing. So learning out of a book for 12 years, knowing that we're rapidly advancing in knowledge and technology and everything else around us, like a computer scientist, those who studied and went to school for computer science 10 years ago cannot come out in the field today and get a job without being updated on new information and education knowledge. So what they did 10 years ago, it's not the same as today. Even though you might have had a degree for computer science, 10 years later, today, you will be not knowing what to do. So what do you think we can do about, or what do you think is the problem, and how do you think we could fix that?
So as far as the textbook, it's really sad that that's the case, and those books are still in circulation.
Whose attention do you think this should be brought to? The chancellor, the mayor, state board of education?
I think that the mayor and the PEP, the panel on education policy, they actually vote on, PEP actually votes on high-level purchases for the Department of Education, and they have monthly meetings.
Does the chancellor have any involvement in it? Or?
Actually, the chancellor sits on the PEP
okay,
as an
he's part
advisor.
Of, okay,
so,
okay.
In fact, if anyone has any concerns about textbooks, I would strongly recommend, or the lack thereof of current textbooks, I would definitely suggest that they go to a PEP meeting, the Panel on Education Policy. They have monthly meetings, and actually, there are moments where the public can speak for about 2 minutes. So that's number one. But number two is also, I think that we should be talking to folks about updating our curriculum, which is something that for the sciences, what I heard on the high school level, hasn't been done in almost 10 years.
This is what I'm talking about.
And this is problematic.
Very problematic, yes.
So, I mean, I would say that falls with the Board of Regents, which is a state board. I would be reaching out to some of them. I would also be reaching out to our state legislators because they should be advocating for this. In fact, I know for a fact that there's about 3 climate education bills that are out there, and any one of those bills would be awesome to be updated, because our communities are always on the front line of issues that affect our community members. When we have like torrential rain, it floods our subway system. I mean, it causes problems in our community. When we have extreme heat, people die from extreme heat. And all of this is related to climate change. And honestly, and some of the things that are placed in our communities. And that's why they call our communities frontline communities. So if we're always going to be at the front line of things that are not great being placed in our communities, we need to make sure that we're at the front line of learning how to fix those problems and getting the training to do so. So a lot of these climate bills that are out there now would actually help students not only learn what causes it, but also learn skills for those green jobs that are coming down the pipeline. Yes. And so that's one of the major things that I'm advocating for. Sorry, I took over just a little bit, but I think it's so important for us people in our community to get a chance to learn these skills, learn and achieve jobs in solar and offshore wind. Like all of these things are going to be big money makers in the future.
Robotics, they make robots doing law enforcement work now.
We should have like all of this happening in our public schools, in our high schools,
Yes.
in our CTE programs. So and those are the job training programs for students who may not be going to college right away. So,
Well, and I think that, like you say, it falls back to our leadership and our representation, our representatives of our communities, like you said, in our state, Senate, Assembly, city council people.
well, not so much the city council
Yeah,
people,
more into the state side.
more into the state.
But we should focus more on like reaching out to our state reps, senators, and assembly members, and seeing to it that they're advocating for these things in our schools and putting
And the
forth
Board of Regents.
board regents, putting forth the effort to make sure these things are happening for us, so our students are not cheated out of an education that makes them void in the future of our society, where they can't get these green jobs or these highly technical jobs that require certain knowledge and education that you can't qualify because you don't know the work. So we need to balance the scale, that it's across the board, that there's an opportunity for all children, regardless of where they come from, regardless of what they look like, regardless of their height, etc. It should be across the board fairness and education for all of our children. Wouldn't you agree to that?
I totally agree, especially with all of this money that's coming in from the Environmental Bond Act last year that was voted yes on, and the IRA money that's supposed to be coming in, and also with President Biden's Justice 40, which means 40% of the benefits of any of the monies coming in should be going to frontline communities like ours.
Well, they need to hold people accountable and is accountable to make sure this is happening. And Joe Biden, I know he's up for re-election for the president once again, but I don't hear too much being said about a program to do what we're talking about in education from the president. I know there's programs that say, oh, there's money's being put up, etc. But how the money is going to be trickled down into our communities, I don't know. I know if they want to make it a priority, if they could make war a priority for $100 billion or whatever the case is, sent out into war, etc., you should make home a priority as well for our citizens, especially for education, which advances our society and prepares our residents and citizens for operating our society in the future. So let's make education home a priority. Let's put money into education here and hold the locals, the states and cities accountable who get this money, and let it be a report given as to how this money was spent, what was the actual return on the spending of this money, and so on. I mean, what would you think about that, Pat?
I think that's an excellent idea.
So moving forward, Joe Biden, President Biden, with all due respect, if you ever can hear this message here today, please help education here in Bronx and throughout our city and state and the rest of this country. Make sure that the money's across the board and help uplift our young people to be educated in a proper way, in a not an outdated way of fact knowledge, but in an updated way in advanced knowledge, that we may have a great future for America and our children could have a life and make a living, a decent living, and not be uneducated, whereas it leads to other things that is not comfortable for them. So, Ms. Pamela, we thank you for coming on this show today. You shared a great light on your knowledge. I'm sure the viewers are very, very pleased with what they're hearing. And I'm sure some will be encouraged to take action and to be involved now in these Parent Teachers Association. I'm sure more will start to look at their school systems and know that they do have power in their voice, and in unifying with other parents and using their voice collectively together, not in a bad way, but in a suggestive way in getting things done with your schools and making sure first that they're safe, and we need more school security in the schools, better monitoring, and so on. So we're going to thank the viewers for tuning in to Power Talk this week. Once again, we thank you, all the viewers, and Zainabu and all who listened and tuned in. We appreciate it. We didn't have the former deputy mayor with us today, I said, because of an illness. But Miss Stewart, you know what? I think it was enough to me, because it's something to think about and something for us to go forward with. And we'll be happy to have her back and share some other experience at another time. So thank you, viewers. Tune in next week. I believe we have some other good people coming in as well to share some light on more things that's happening in our society. So stay tuned to Power Talk, because it's going to be exactly that. Power Talk, right here on Millennium TV 24. And I'm your host, Eric Stevenson. Thank you, and thank you, Miss. I don't have anything you'd like to say to. Okay.